my artifact exhibit from Rockingham County. It is entitled Artifacts of Early American Home Sites in Rockingham County, North Carolina. And in this display case are represented about 10 plantation homes and cabin sites from the 1700s up until about the time of the First World War. A lot of Rockingham history is represented here. On the top row of my exhibit, this represents about 4 plantational cabin sites in Rockingham County. Starting with on the left-hand side is the Crowder cabin site, which was in the early 19th century, built in Wentworth, North Carolina. In the front of the Crowder exhibit, we have a ruby brooch that was probably made in the early 1800s. Moving to the left, we have 2 early American cufflinks from the early 1800s with a design on them. In the back, a Union Civil War General Staff officer's button was found near the steps of the cabin site with stars on it and a Waterbury Scoville back mark. It has 90% of the gold gilt left on it. During the Civil War, Confederate officers wore Union buttons at the beginning until they could make their own. And an example is the cover photo of the Encyclopedia of the Confederacy. On the cover is a frock coat worn by a former governor of North Carolina's son, Eugene Moorhead. His father, John Motley Moorhead, is from Rockingham County, North Carolina, but his son was a Confederate officer. That coat is now in the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia. On the front of it are rows of Union General Staff buttons, exactly like the one I found at the Crowder home site. Moving to the right is an early colonial cabin site on East Hogan's Creek in Rockingham County. There's been a few artifacts found there, including on the case as a suspender buckle from the early 1800s or late 1700s with an initial on it. Or up below it is a filigree patterned flat button, very fancy with a flower design. It's probably imported from a European country. Below it is a regular flat button. And to the right are 2 coins found at the site in 1889, Indian head penny on the left and a 1904 V nickel on the right. To the right of it is a small case containing my oldest American coin find, an 1801 flowing hair Liberty large cent. It was found at a colonial cabin site on Herbin's Creek in the southeast corner of Rockingham County. In that site we found about 25 flat buttons, furniture pieces, pewter utensils, and a thimble came out of there, and a colonial hoe. But this is still the oldest American coin find I've ever made. It was on my father's property. To the right of it is an early American or early 1800 cabin site in the Little Troublesome Creek area south of Reidsville, about 4 miles, on my father's property. There's a picture of a cabin site that came out of my parents' photo album. It had a stone chimney, which indicates it was built before the Civil War. Many tenant families have lived in this cabin until it was torn down in the 1950s. But we saved a photo of it, which I attached to the case. In the bottom of the case, you've got a pocket knife from the Civil War period. To the right of it is an early spoon made out of iron. Above the spoon is a rare collar iron to iron collars with, minus the handle on it. To the center of the case, you can tell the story of the families that lived there by the artifacts. Whoever lived in the cabin was a mason and a shriner. In the center of the case is a Shriner's badge. The Shriner organization was founded around 1870 in the United States. And below it is a Masonic badge with a symbol that indicates North Carolina Masons on it. To the left of it are 2 buttons from the Merchant Marines from the 1800s, and whoever lived there was a sailor. that had 2 Merchant Marine badges, and he also, he must have been from San Francisco, because in the upper part of the case where I found a buffalo nickel with a San Francisco mint mark. So he must have went for San Francisco. To the left of the case are 2 suspender buckles from the 1800s, and below it are 2 roller buckles from the 1800s. Roller buckles are about the time of the Civil War period, and below it is the oldest button I found at the site, an 1830 flat button in the bottom left-hand corner of the case, and to the right of it is a 1870 period button. The upper part of the case, many coins were found on the site. Here's a selection of a few of them. I had a buffalo nickel, San Francisco mint, a 1907 Indian head penny, 1897 dime, a Mercury dime 1926, and a 1942 World War II nickel. And also I found the oldest coin is an 1895 Indian head penny in the top of the case. And I found a V nickel 1907 also. So that concludes the top shelf on the case. On the left is a family home site of a Stanfield Marcelliot cabin site off the Candy Creek Road in Reidsville, North Carolina, south of Reidsville, towards Greensboro. That's a very old area. There's cemeteries along that road, very old cemeteries in Rockingham County, and the home site was behind the Marcelliot Stanfield Cemetery, which is now overgrown, and hunted it about 5 years ago and found various items in there dating from the early 1800s up to the 1900s. The home was torn down and pushed off and destroyed by development in the last few years. But some of the items in this case include a photo locket with the caption "To My Mother" engraved on the back. It had a picture in it at one time, probably a daguerre type picture or a tin type picture, and that may have belonged to my great-grandmother Marcelliot. I believe that anyway. In the bottom below it is a unique artifact. It may be what we think is a wax seal stamper of some type, and it's got gold in it, high quality gold embossed on the end of it, some kind of script letter in gold. We're not sure what it is, but that's my best guess. If you move around the case, you'll see roller buckles from the Civil War, parts of locks, buttons, flat buttons, 1870 buttons, even a ring from the 1800s. We also have a sterling silver spoon and a sterling silver plated spoon and part of a pewter spoon in here. Also some rimfire bullets. Rimfire bullets can help date a site. They were made up to about 1915, sometime between rimfire cartridges, post-Civil War cartridges like that from about 1870 to about 1915. One of the cartridges appears to be exploded backwards. It might have misfired. In the middle is a cabin site that dates to about 1800 or maybe late 1700s in the Williamsburg community off of Highway 150 south of Reidsville. This is part of the Jeff Garrett plantation. The cabin site was on the Jeff Garrett plantation. We thought it was his uncle's house. There's been some unique artifacts found in here. The best one was found last October. In front is a colonial medallion, definitely imported from overseas. When it has a picture of a soldier's head on it, we're not sure if it's just Roman or Italian or Spanish. There's a blow-up of a picture on the wall behind it to show what kind of soldier it is. That's the key to defining the origin of the button. The medallion. It had a hole already punched in it. Beware. I wrote a letter about it to American Digger magazine recently to the question and answer, Charles Harris, and I hope they're looking at it right now and trying to consult and see, give me some information about it. Other artifacts in the cabin site include a Victorian picture sash buckle brooch. It had a Victorian picture in it at one time, and the artifact in the middle. It was broken out and has a unique design on it. To the right of it is another imported flat button, maybe from overseas. Could be a French button. It's got perforations in it. It's not like your usual flat button, plain flat button you find around here. In the back is a 1800 horse stirrup, and behind it is a recent find of I found the key to the plantation last Friday. That key probably is very old. It may date to about 1800. I'm not sure. It's hard to date keys. To the right of this is a display case of the William Deering Homesite in Madison, North Carolina, in western Rockingham County, near Blues Creek Lake. There were actually two sites on this home. There's a picture of the home in the Rockingham County Heritage Book, and it is on the back wall. That's what it looked like when it was erected. It has been torn down. It was torn down in the 1900s, I believe, and when Duke Power bought some of the land around it, and it was actually moved down the hill in 1840 towards the creek. And because the wife, the reason it was called Valley Home is she wanted to go down into the valley, move the home down into the valley because she didn't like the wind blowing around her on top of the hill all the time. So they named it Valley Home. And it was on Blues Creek, the secondary site. We went into the secondary site and we found a few artifacts there. There was also a mill down on the creek near the secondary site. But these artifacts represent most of the home where it was sitting on top of the hill. There's a few in here that were found on the secondary site. Well, this concludes the exhibit I have on Rockingham County's early American home sites. Hopefully this gives a perspective to the people of Rockingham County about their own history and how artifacts relate to it. Over time, it represents different periods in our U.S. history, also from the French and Indian War on up to World War I, so people can understand why history is important to this state. Thank you.